YouTube, what the crap's going on? Heir of Carthage here, back in Total War Warhammer 2, where I'm going to have to pause this battle straight from the outset. This is going to be a great one between the Wood Elves and Norsca. Let me introduce you to the Wood Elf army to start with. The Wood Elf army has 4 Deepwood Scouts. Now remember, these are archers who have long range and the ability to fire in a 360-degree arc, and they can fire while moving. There's 4 Wild Riders, which is going to give a lot of low armor hitting power. For the Wood Elves, there is a Spell Singer, Lore of Life, a Glady on her Eagle, and then if we look at the Norscan side, there are going to be 2 Marauder Horsemen with Javelins right up front, 2 Norscan Warhounds, one on either flank, some Marauders, a couple of Berserkers, one of which is the Brutes of the Hound. That is a devastatingly effective unit in certain situations. 3 armored skin wolves, one in the back, one on either flank, and then 2 Marauder Hunters with Javelins. Now remember, these Javelins are specifically anti-large. And then we've got Wulfric the Wanderer here, as well as a Famir Balefiend, which, again, this is one of my favorite units in the game. Very cool unit, lots of armor-piercing damage, and a very cool spellcaster unit. So let's see what happens. Obviously, the Wood Elves are going to start off by just absolutely deleting the Marauder Horsemen on this flank. There's 2 Glade Riders with Hagbane tips as well that I failed to mention a moment ago. The Norscan Warhounds are going to immediately put on a chase, and I can understand this, but when you have Wild Riders so near, and you know that these Deepwood Scouts can put out so much damage early, this is probably a bit premature, and you almost want to pull back your mobile units behind some of your infantry, and maybe just let your infantry absorb some of the fire that's going to happen here. Now, Wulfric's going to come under fire pretty quickly. You can see that immediately 3 different units of high mobility for Norsca were taken off the field. And these Wild Riders are going to be able to cause tremendous infantry damage, potentially. Look at this here. Nice Pendulum. Does some damage to the Deepwood Scouts, which all the damage that the Norscan player can do to the archers at this point is great. Any dead Deepwood Scout takes his ammo with him. So that is a victory. You can see the Skin Wolves over here get mobbed early by some Wild Riders. There was too many Wild Riders and they do too much damage. But the Glady lands here, which is pretty premature, and she gets hit by Wulfric's Hunter of Champions, which is going to pin her down and potentially get a lot of damage done. You can see that the infantry line does its best to push back the Deepwood Scouts, but they are taking heavy damage as a result. These Hagbane tip Glade Riders kind of keeping their distance, which is smart. And over here, some more Skin Wolves and Javelins get tied down in a prolonged fight with a bunch of Wild Riders, which is probably going to favor the Wood Elves at that point, I would think. Over here, however, the Wood Elves get a little too engaged, and they're not able to keep these Javelins busy in the background either. And that's going to cause a lot of damage. Again, the specific anti-large with the lack of armor and shields on these Wild Riders, it's going to make these Javelins be pretty effective if they can get some hits in. You can see they're a little slow to fire. They're actually firing at the Spell Singer at this point. I think that the Javelins would have been better spent there on the Wild Riders because it would have done tremendous damage at point-blank range and taken some Wild Riders off the field. I don't think that Spell Singer was probably too likely to get away regardless. The Famir Balefiend is chasing these archers as quickly as he can, and he's pretty quick. If you look there, the speed 54, but I mean, how can he possibly tie down all these archers? He's failing to do so. And you can see that Norsca has pursued right up close to the border of the map here too, which means if their units rout, that the Wood Elves are going to be able to easily remove their units from the battlefield without a chance for them to regroup. Now over here, I think the Wood Elves make a bit of a mistake. They get engaged in melee with these Glade Riders while they still have a lot of ammo. This is a mistake. You should sit back and shoot. Also, the Brutes of the Hound, don't charge these guys with low armor units. You'll end up taking as much damage as you deal, and you can see the Wild Riders did deal a lot of damage, but the Brutes of the Hound are just slaughtering these units as they get a little bit of time in melee. So again, you will damage them on the charge, but they will turn around and cause tremendous damage to you. Just look at the numbers ticking off of this Wild Rider. Brutes of the Hound have extremely high melee attack and very solid damage. They don't do a lot of armor piercing. They're better against infantry, but anything that doesn't have a lot of armor is going to take tremendous damage, and they're unbreakable. So it's a unit that's best dealt with missiles, and you had the Hagbane tips. It would have been better to just sit back, let the Hagbane tips do their work on a unit which can otherwise cause a tremendous amount of damage. The armored skin wolves and Wolfric are able to get a couple of wild riders off the field. Fortunately for the elves, the Spellsinger was able to get back in the fight before actually exiting the map, which is a big deal. Here there's going to be a regrowth on the wild riders. It's an interesting choice. There's only 18 wild riders left, so I'm not sure that I like the regrowth here, and once again charged into Brutes of the Hound. Wild javelins were nearby, and the javelins would have been the more appropriate target, as the regrouped Glade Riders could have harassed the Brutes of the Hound. But a tremendous amount of damage has been done by the Wood Elves. The fight is very close. The challenge for the Wood Elves is that they are running short on ammunition. So once these Deepwood Scouts run out of ammo, they turn into very low armor, somewhat mediocre melee units. So they're not going to be terrible, but they're not going to be great. I almost kind of feel like that for the cost of Deepwood Scouts and Way Watchers, that it probably wouldn't hurt to buff their melee stats just a little. Because they are very expensive, and I would say that the Wood Elves are a somewhat flimsy faction in multiplayer for those who lack skill. For those who have a ton of skill, they can be pretty good, but they're difficult to control because of how much their glass cannon. I don't know, maybe buffing the melee on units like that would make the Wood Elves overpowered. I have no idea. I'll tell you what else would be cool, a Deepwood Scout unit that carries a secondary spear. That would be an interesting unit to potentially throw in as well. May not be great against infantry, but could maybe defend itself against light cavalry. These Glade Riders out here firing in from a distance, as we take a look at what Norsca's got left in their army. These armored skin wolves back here have helped catch the Spellsinger. The Glady is in here as well. She's going to get some assistance from a regrouped Wild Rider, which should allow her to escape. But those skin wolves are tough. Skin wolves are some very tough units, and they're armored. If they weren't armored skin wolves, the Wood Elves would find themselves in a little bit better position. And look at these Brutes of the Hound. Only 20 of them left. But these guys are still going to rack up some serious kills against a squishy target like these Deepwood Scouts. They're going to knock them around. So the Brutes of the Hound, again, probably could have been dealt with by the Glade Riders earlier. You can see the Glade Riders now firing at the Marauder Javelins, and that's probably a good choice. And here you're going to see the Glade Riders charge in to some of the Marauder Javelins. The problem is that this larger unit of Marauder Javelins back here is going to immediately turn. And again, remember earlier I said that they should have fired at the Wild Riders. You can see why. This Glade Rider takes a lot of damage and is going to get routed very quickly. The anti-large Javelins, very, very nice unit for low armor stuff like that that's large. The Wood Elves do manage to get rid of a lot of the Norscan forces here. In fact, that Javelin's going to drop now. But another Skin Wolf has regrouped off in the distance, and these three Skin Wolves are armored, they're fast, and they're going to deal a lot of damage to any remaining Wood Elf unit. And so the Wood Elves, I think, are finding themselves at a disadvantage here where it looked very good for them earlier on. Still a very close battle, but these armored skin wolves should have what's needed to pull this battle back. Look at the unbreakable nature here, the Brutes of the Hound. They managed to pick up another 20 kills, even with only 20 or so berserkers remaining. So again, the skin wolves now here late in the game just going to be too powerful. What's funny is these are called armored skin wolves. All I see is like a small piece of armor up on their shoulder. That's a lot of armor for not having much armor. Anyway, you can see that Norsca is going to turn this one around at the last second. Really an incredible battle. I like the very gutsy, skirmishy gameplay from the Wood Elves because it is very risky against Norsca. Norsca has a lot of mobility, but picking all those Wild Riders, that's a good counter to that mobility. Norsca's mobility, it's okay if you have the armored skin wolves, but Hounds and Marauder Horsemen, not so much going to like fighting all of that, the Wild Riders. Plus, the Wild Riders double as a nice tool in late game because they're so good against low armor infantry. Wild Riders, unless I'm mistaken, should have the highest attack out there for any light cavalry unit. Well, they're also one of the most expensive light cavalry units, probably outside of Doomfire Warlocks. But anyway, these Wild Riders have tremendous attack for a light cavalry. They're very fast, they have a high charge, and they deal a lot of weapon damage to low armor units, which makes them really an ideal pick to take out Norscan infantry, unless that happens to be Marauder champions, which is, sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. But I mean, for the most part, you're probably not going to expect Norsca to bring armored infantry against the Wood Elves because it's not usually necessary. So I think that makes the Wild Riders a pretty safe pick against any Norscan army. Now, all the arrows keep them safe from stuff like mammoths or frostworms or any of the other stuff that Norsca can field that can get around the battlefield in a hurry or cause a lot of damage. But they're vulnerable, again, to warhounds, skin wolves, and all that other stuff. The Wild Riders, I think that, a couple of different decisions with the Wild Riders staying out of those Brutes of the Hound and the Wild Riders kind of staying away from the infantry and focusing out the skin wolves would have left the Wood Elves in a position for victory, almost certainly, in my opinion, because you still get fear from the Eagles that these two leaders were on, and then combine that in late game charges from Wild Riders against infantry that's relatively unarmored, and I think you would have found yourself in good position. But great game between Halo and Wicked. This was very fun. I appreciate it being submitted. Make sure you go in the comments and thank these guys for the awesome battle that we got to watch here. Fun matchup. Very much enjoyed that one. Glad I got to watch it. If you all want to see more, make sure to subscribe. There'll be more videos, and also make sure you subscribe because as the new DLC is approaching, as soon as I can get early access and show it, I will be. So make sure you've hit the subscribe button, click the bell so you get notified. I know a lot of people are making videos about all the new lords they announced. I did a video with Lore Master of Sotek where he actually accurately predicted the 2 of the remaining 3 legendary lords. I don't think he'd ever heard of the other one. So he did very good, and I like making those videos. I guess I just don't like making videos that's just me rehashing the news that you already know. Total War has already announced who these lords are. Their mechanics are up. There's no sense in me copying, pasting another video that a lot of other people have done that just, again, rehash news that's already out there for you. If you want to go see the news on the DLC, go to Total War's channel. Go to their blog. You can see all the news there. Again, there's no sense in me rehashing it. The next content that I'll get up there for the Curse of the Vampire Coast is going to be when I have actual gameplay to come show you, because that's going to be the next piece of this that we want to get into. Anyway, hope you all enjoyed it. HeirofCarthage signing out for now. I will see you soon.